Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What is the creepiest or most unexplainable event that you have ever experienced? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. We had a little copper music box that would start playing on its own. It was a man sitting at a player piano, and it would play the Entertainer song. Now, I know that music boxes and such can spring, for lack of a better word, forward and play a few notes, but this thing would act like someone had wound it up and would play for a minute or two completely at random. One car from one direction and another car from the other direction stopped in front of my house. Both drivers got out and one gave the other a briefcase. Now that I'm older, I'm guessing it was some kind of drug deal or something, but at the time I found it very weird. I was like 8 or 9, boy, in a gas station in West Virginia, paying for my dad. Guy standing in line behind me spanked me on the ass with a rolled up newspaper. I looked back at him, he smirked and said, "There's more where that came from." I paid and got the F out. Creepy as shit. My grandparents lived in the middle of nowhere in Florida, and I spent a lot of time with them because my parents were super young and weren't really up for the whole parenting thing. About half a mile from their house was a creek, and I would always walk up and down looking for small fish to catch and release. One day, I was climbing a berm next to the creek, and when I crested the top, I saw a dark-haired woman in a white dress leaning over the water, crying to herself. The nearest house was my grandparents', and their neighbor was another mile down the road, so there was no reason this random woman should be in the middle of an isolated forest. I just sat there for a minute watching her, hiding behind the berm. After a couple minutes, she suddenly stands up and lets out a blood-curdling scream. I'm talking a scream that sounded like someone was skinning her alive. Obviously, I absolutely shit my pants and booked it back to my grandparents' house. Those woods were relatively well known as being a dumping ground for murder victims, but I don't think it was a paranormal or anything, just very unusual. Most likely a woman who was cracked out of her mind and wandered into the woods. My grandma called the cops, but seeing as it was the middle of nowhere, it took Florida State Police 6 hours to show up, so whoever it was long gone by that point. Maybe it was a relative of someone who lost their life there holding some type of vigil. Maybe it was the ghost of someone who was murdered there, or just somebody who was lost in the glades, man. Either way, pretty wild, and I could see how that would freak you out as a young man. Pretty sure I witnessed a kidnapping once, and it still lives rent-free in my head. The woman lost her slipper when she was trying to get away, and I took a picture of it that I still have for some reason. I did indeed report it to police right after I saw it occur, but they were pretty blasé about it, and I never ended up being able to determine what they did to investigate. My younger brother and I lived in a small town on the edge of the city limits. Our street had a large number of young families, and so we had a lot of kids our age that all played together. Our house was on the side of the road that delineated the city limits. Think our house, our fence, alley, then field that was out of the city limits. That field was the site of a few things that come to mind. Late one night, recalling summer, a group of about a dozen of us were playing Spotlight. Teams hunt other players with flashlights, get caught, you join the team and the hunt. Out in the field, 2 small circles of light started to glide back and forth. We decided to investigate. The light was dim, but we could see it, and it would stop, hover, move, stop, move, etc. No matter how many flashlights we shined on it, it seemed to be too far away to light up, just continue to fully shine. We finally got creeped out, left the field, and probably wound up at someone's house. A week later, we were walking near the field when we saw a huge snow owl in the trees. This is Oklahoma. We don't have snow owls. To this day, that snow owl is the best explanation we have for that light. We decided it must have been looking at us from a distance. The other time, we were building a fort in the alley. We were using pallets and had erected walls, a 4-pallet squared roof, and were starting on a second floor. One of us got an odd feeling and told all of us to get in the fort. We did, and seconds later, a man emerged from the woods about 50 yards away with a gun, walks past the fort, down the alley, to the road, and turns the corner. We stayed in the fort for a few minutes, heard a gunshot, then left the fort and made a hasty retreat to our house. Never heard anything about it, but to this day, I wonder what would have happened had we not gotten in the fort when we did. I usually go hiking and stay in the forest overnight, sleeping in a bivvy and sometimes under a tarp. Now, it's important to say I'm based in Europe, so no wild animals to be afraid of because usually they just boot it as soon as they notice you. So, one winter night I'm sleeping under my tarp, which connects to the ground on one side. It's in an area where there were fierce battles in the forests of the border between Germany and Belgium in World War II. I hear something walking in the leaves, which is normal. There are always deer and feral pigs on and about, but this time it comes closer and closer until I hear it right on the other side of my tarp, and it starts growling. It's a noise I had never heard, and for the moment, I was frozen trying to figure out what it might be and what to do. But I just decided to yell back, and that did the trick. The animal walked a few steps and then turned back to growl once more before finally retreating. Let's put it this way. I didn't sleep for a while after that. I looked up the noise and I think it was a badger. Me and someone I used to know in high school way back when met up to catch up. We were talking about our views on religion in some park. When we were walking back to our cars, some guy said he had overheard us. We interacted a little and then went to our cars. I told her how awkward I felt knowing he overheard everything. She looked at me and said, "He?" After some comparing notes, we realized we'd seen and heard entirely different people. She'd seen an elderly woman. I'd seen a middle-aged man. Only problem is, we only talked to the one person. My family used to raise cattle. One morning I came out to check on them and I found one of the heifers had been more or less completely devoured. This same cow was perfectly fine the day before. There was nothing left but some hide, bones, and intestines. Thing is, none of the predators that are in my area would be able to kill and eat an entire cow within the course of one night, much less leave so little behind. These types of story interest me because I'm assuming you and your family have a deep knowledge base of predators in the area as you raise cattle. So to see something like that would be really disturbing. Just wonder what could have done it. People? I was about 5 when this happened, but I remembered it like it was yesterday. I don't know what was wrong with me, but when I was about to sleep, suddenly I see my lower drawer open and my plushy snake toy was peeking its head out of the drawer. It was looking around for a bit and then froze when we made eye contact. When I got out of bed and approached it, I just picked it up, closed my drawer, and went back to sleep with it in my hand. I don't know if I was dreaming or hallucinating, but the next day I remember I had the plushie in my arms in the morning, but I just went on like it was normal. Looking back now, I was such an innocent and careless kid, lol. I've had strange things happen recently. I was waiting for my tax documents to come in so I could do my taxes. I had 3 documents that I put on my bedside table until I had time. I decided to do it the other day, and I couldn't find one of them. I tore the house apart, quizzed my husband, who swore he never touched it, checked the garbage, etc. I had resigned myself to the fact I would have to request another one when it arrived in the mail. It was the same one, exact same information. I was really confused but grateful. I checked into it. It was not sent twice as far as the office could tell me. I don't know what to think. I know I had that document because I had done some calculations with it. It's been itching at me like crazy. A few months ago, I was sitting in my living room on the couch watching TV with a family member late at night. We have a high ceiling with a couple of rectangular windows at the very top of the wall, just under where it meets the ceiling. The windows are so high, about 30 feet, we really only have them for natural lighting. So on the night in question, a green laser beam suddenly shone down through one of the windows, seemingly scanned the entire living room before stopping and pointing the beam right next to my family member for about 10 seconds, and then disappearing entirely. It had to be either a drone or from some sort of flying aircraft. I live in a relatively secluded place, which made the situation all the more unsettling. I was in junior high and had really long hair. I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and almost tripped on a shoe on the floor. I bent down to move it, and it felt like someone grabbed my entire ponytail and yanked it. I also could not sleep facing the wall for the longest time because it always felt like someone or something was right behind me. Very recently, I returned to my apartment after visiting family for a few days, and my roommate was out of town and had been for a few days. I removed the old coffee pod from the Keurig she had left and threw it away in a brand new trash bag because I had just taken out the trash and got a new pod to put in. When I opened the lid, there was another pod. I figured that I had just meant to throw the old one away, but didn't actually do it. And when I went to toss it, the only thing in the trash was the pod I had just thrown out. I still can't explain how I threw away the same coffee pot twice. I am not a superstitious person, nor do I believe in magic, psychic powers, or anything of the sort. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation for this, but I haven't figured it out. That, or it's a sleepy-brained coincidence. When I was a little girl, I had a babysitter, let's call her Delilah, and Delilah's mother worked as a family's housekeeper. Delilah looked after me all the time, so I knew her face very well. Years later, when I was a teenager and hadn't seen Delilah in a few years, I woke up groggy one morning and looked out the window into the front driveway and saw Delilah walking toward the house, visibly pregnant. I remember thinking, oh, good for her, congrats. I assumed she was stopping by to say hi to my parents and expected to see her and catch up once I was up and about. But when I left my room, she was nowhere to be seen, so I just assumed she left quickly and didn't think much of it. The next day, her mother came by to do the housekeeping, and I said something like, oh, I saw Delilah yesterday. I didn't know she was pregnant, congrats. To which her mother stared at me and said, Delilah's in Australia. She's been for like 3 months. I was confused because I had been sure it was Delilah, and we had a long driveway, so it didn't make much sense for a random woman to be walking up so close to the front door, but I assumed I must have been mistaken. I did get a chance to see her and catch up with her once she came back from Australia, and as it turned out, she was pregnant. Perhaps it was momentary premonition. Maybe time isn't linear but more a loop. Maybe you were ahead of the information, who knows? Or maybe you just had a dream of somebody you kind of knew and you got a 50-50 chance of being pregnant or not pregnant, so. This is so bizarre it's almost embarrassing. I've never told anyone about it. When I was a child, maybe I was sitting on the toilet when what felt like a large marble or a smooth round rock rolled up my esophagus, smacked the back of my teeth with an audible clink, and then rolled back down. It took only a couple of seconds. I was stunned. It happened again on another occasion, so I resolved to keep my mouth open whenever I was pooping, so in the case of another occurrence, whatever it was would fall out onto the floor. Unfortunately, I didn't always remember, and I'm sure it happened at least one more time. I never figured out what it was. However, one day I was staying with my aunt and uncle, and I overheard my older cousin talking to his parents, telling them, it comes up into my mouth real fast, and then it goes back down. He was demonstrating by using his fingers in a rolling motion from his stomach to his teeth, and then back down. Not sure why, but I never asked him about it. This is a story from my parents, but there was this one time that one of my mom's clients, she's an elder care expert, this really old lady was saying that my dad's mom was visiting. My dad's mom never left Syria and passed the same night that he arrived in the US, and that client was really lucid. She did not have dementia like a lot of the other old folks her age that my mom worked with, but she kept on saying that my mom's husband's mother was at the retirement center. Then, 2 weeks after my mom told my dad about it, he was taking a shower on between two of the jobs that he was doing at the time when he inexplicably felt like his mom was standing in the bathroom looking out the window, which was something that he could remember her doing a few times whenever bad things happened. It was kind of a personality quirk that his mom had, and later that day, my mom told him that the client had passed away. When the times were matched up later on, it turned out that the client had died less than 5 minutes before he went into the bathroom. My dad says still that if he didn't believe that there's an afterlife where our ancestors are able to watch over us, that convinced him. There was also another time when he was in the car and felt like his mom was suddenly there freaking out, and the sensation caused him to slam on the brakes just in time for a truck to go barreling through the intersection, and it would have hit him. So maybe there is some merit to the idea. I would like to hope so, to be sure.